mentioned us being a month into the season, and this is the point in time where small sample sizes aren't so small anymore, and we can kind of make some bigger picture judgments based on what we've seen. I say that to say last night was the game of the season so far, or at least the storyline of the season so far. We talked about it last week. The Cleveland Cavaliers came here to Boston, to TD Garden, to take on the defending champions, and they left with a 1 in the loss column. Boston hands Cleveland their first loss of the regular season. 121-17. The Celtics led by as many as 21 in the game. Big Jason Tatum night, also big Donovan Mitchell night, not a big Darius Garland night. What were your biggest takeaways from that game as far as what it means big picture with these teams being potentially the last two standing in the Eastern Conference?
I think it shows you a little bit on both sides, right? Like, it shows you that Boston is still capable for getting up for those big games and showing everybody, all right, this is why we are the title favorites. This is why they're the best team in the NBA. But then on the other side, you see it from Cleveland where, like, in the first half, that looked like one of those classic games from this version of the Celtics team where they cannot miss any shot that they put up and they completely blow the doors off you in wire to wire. It's domination. Yes, in the past, we have seen Boston let their foot off the gas, let teams back into the game. And I think there was part of that in last night's game. But I also want to give more credit to the Cavs for not giving up when Jason Tatum is hitting ridiculous contested threes. Derek White, hand in his face, doesn't matter, nothing but net. Like, the Cavs continue to fight. They continue to play their game. Like you said, Darius Garland didn't have his best game. Going into that game, he was the only player in the league averaging over 20 points per game, shooting 50, 40, 90 from the field, from three, from the free throw line. He laid an egg with a 3 for 21 stinker. Donovan Mitchell honestly didn't have the best first half, really came on strong. I think he had like 22 points, something like that in the second half to kind of keep them alive. But really, it was the front court that kept Cleveland in the game. And yes, Boston is without Kristaps Porzingis right now, and Al Horford can only play so many minutes. But Jared Allen and Evan Mobley, they proved why Cleveland can be so dangerous. Because even on nights where Darius Garland doesn't have it, even when Donovan Mitchell doesn't have it in the first half, and you're playing a team like Boston that is so good defending the perimeter, and they have guys that can disrupt, smaller guards like Mitchell and Garland, they can still go get it inside. And that's exactly how the Cavs stayed in that game. That's how they climbed back into the game. I was really impressed with the front court play from those two, especially after neither of them were particularly good in the playoffs against Celtics last year. So it showed signs of growth there. And, I guess flipping back to Boston, when Horford was on the floor, Boston was winning. They were winning those minutes. They were winning that game. It's when Neemias Queta came into the game, and he's been really good for Boston all season long. He struggled a little bit. They were attacking him in pick and rolls, really taking advantage of him. And that's when Cleveland was able to make their run. So, for Celtics fans that watch that game, there's got to be that moment of like, okay, when Kristaps Porzingis is healthy and available, that game looks completely different. And maybe they do blow him out wire to wire. But at the same time, if you're a Cleveland fan, you're looking at that and going, okay, one, we can contend with anybody in the league if we can play Boston as well as we did last night on a game where Garland didn't have his best. And two, there is a way to exploit Boston if Porzingis isn't healthy, and his health is not guaranteed, as we've seen.
Yeah, that's the big thing for me to start with the Celtics getting up for that game. It really did feel like opening night for a little while, right? Like we're hyping up this matchup. It's been circled on our calendars, especially as that Cavs win streak was getting larger and mounting up. Those wins were mounting up, and then it wasn't that they laid out a dud. It was just the Celtics just could not miss. And it's just like relentless. Because like it wasn't even a Jaylen Brown game, so to speak. He finished with 17, I believe, in the game. But it's like Jason Tatum's making the shots that he's making. And when it's not him, it's Drew Holiday getting out of his slump. And when it's not Drew Holiday, it's Derek White. Or it's Al Horford. Or it's Peyton Pritchard, who came out and had some big moments off the bench as well. And that just speaks to the Celtics' depth and just really how they can fire on all cylinders. And if one guy doesn't have it, the next man is stepping up. But I do give credit to the Cavaliers for kind of pushing back and doing what the Knicks didn't. I know part of it was because the Knicks was opening night and everybody was learning each other. And the Cavs were without Isaac Okoro. I think they were out Dean Wade as well. And obviously those guys don't equate to Kristaps Porzingis. But I would love to see if both of these teams had their full complement of players, because I think it would be a really interesting matchup. I think the biggest thing that I took away from that is that the Cavs, are legit. Not to say that I didn't think they were before, but I think that was something that we needed to see what it looked like against the Celtics and how they responded to those Celtics runs, because the game probably does look a little different if it's being played in Cleveland. So as we look at that and the scope or the landscape of the Eastern Conference, it does feel like Boston is still in a tier of their own, but I think that Cleveland is right there because nobody else, and we talked about the East just kind of being just a bunch of average teams, and the Magic are starting to kind of separate themselves a little bit. But I know we talked about what's legit and what isn't a month into the season. We're talking contenders and pretenders, so to speak. We obviously know the defending champs are contenders, but are you ready to kind of put the Cavs in that contender tier, even if it's a notch below the Celtics? And how does the rest of the Eastern Conference fit into that picture with everything that is and isn't going on?
Yeah, that's a great question because like Cleveland does feel like they are a tier above the rest of the teams in the East right now, especially with teams like Philly really struggling, Milwaukee kind of figuring it out, but still struggling. Like you said, there's the Orlandos that, without Paulo Banchero, they're starting to figure it out a little bit more. Defense never went anywhere. They needed Franz Wagner to step it up offensively. Yeah. He's done exactly that over the stretch. But it is still the Celtics, and then probably 50 yards, and then it's the Cavs, and then maybe 25 yards, a couple first downs, and then it's the rest of the Eastern Conference. That's a way that at least I'm painting it out in my mind, because the Knicks are still injured. They're still trying to figure it out. Trying to figure out where those pieces fit into place. The Bucks are still one of the most dangerous teams in the Eastern Conference. There's no doubt about that, but defensively they're struggling. They're relying a lot on Dame and Giannis to carry that team. And yes, Chris Middleton should be coming back eventually. We don't know when that'll be or what level he'll be playing at once he does get back. So they still feel like a tier below in my opinion. But, the Cavs definitely verified themselves last night in my opinion. Especially because last year in the playoffs, in that Celtics series in particular, with Mobley and Allen, what they're going to bring defensively. They have a strong backline defense, perimeter defense, maybe not their strongest suit, but they have guys that can fill in, Isaac Okoros of the world that can fill in and guard here and there. But it felt like they were really, really, really relying on Donovan Mitchell night in and night out in the playoffs last year. If he had a single off night, they had no shot at winning because Garland wasn't playing at the level that he had been playing at all season prior to last night. They were trying to figure it out with guys like Dean Wade, Max Strus in the lineup. But Mobley wasn't giving him much offensively. Jared Allen wasn't giving him a ton offensively. So I give credit to Kenny Atkinson for kind of unlocking them on offense a little bit and finding different ways to put the ball in the hands of their playmakers, but, making them aware that hey, it doesn't have to just be DG and Spida. You can get Mobley involved, you can get Jared Allen involved, and these guys are scoring at will around the rim like they did against Celtics last night. That to me shows a sign of progress from where this Cavs team was last year.